Ellie Parker was only 10 when she crossed a forgotten road in the Arizona desert and found two officers and their loyal German shepherd left to die beneath a scorching 140-degree sun. A child with nothing became the one thing they needed most: hope. Her shaking hands offered water. Her bravery gave them a second chance, and her heart uncovered the darkness behind a cruel trade in stolen K9s. This is a story of loyalty, unseen angels, and the miracle God places in our path when we refuse to walk away. Before we begin, tell me where you're watching from, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more true stories of courage, compassion, and the grace that still protects us every day. The Arizona desert baked beneath a ruthless sun, heat shimmering like a silent threat across the endless red earth. Officer Luke Harris, a tall and broad-shouldered man of 35 with windswept brown hair and a jaw that looked carved from stubborn rock, steered the patrol SUV forward along the dusty service road outside Cedar Ridge. Sweat clung to his tan skin though the AC blasted hard, and a faint line of worry creased his brow. Luke had always been calm under pressure, yet today something gnawed inside his chest. A hunch, a warning born from years of seeing cruelty wear a polite face. Losing his older brother to an unsolved crime years ago had sharpened that instinct. It made him stubborn, vigilant, unable to look away from the darkness humans could choose. Beside him in the passenger seat rode Officer Megan Clark, 32 years old, fit and agile with long blonde hair tied into a tight ponytail and sharp blue eyes that never missed a movement. She carried a brave exterior, but inside, she constantly forced herself to be strong. The world had once convinced her that women were weaker, especially in law enforcement, and she had promised to disprove that every single day she wore the badge. Her voice, when she spoke, carried both confidence and a fragile hope that by doing her job well, she could help rewrite the stories of victims who had no one. In the back rested their partner, Duke, a 5-year-old German shepherd with a sleek black and tan coat and intelligent amber eyes. He was strong, loyal, and trained for pursuit and protection. Duke had a scar on his right ear, a reminder of a violent raid where he saved a missing child by shielding her from a knife. Even now, he sat alert, ears twitching at every strange noise outside, his intuition sharper than any human's. They were three souls connected by the duty to protect those who could not protect themselves. And today they were chasing shadows. Reports had surfaced of dogs, especially retired K9s, vanishing mysteriously around Cedar Ridge. Luke drummed his fingers against the steering wheel as he scanned the barren horizon. Abandoned barns, drifting dust, and the twisted skeletons of dead cacti stared back. "Dispatch said the caller heard engines around the quarry last night," Megan said, reading the GPS. "Could be nothing. Could be everything." Luke nodded, though the unease inside him tightened. He returned his focus to the road just as static hissed through the radio. "Unit 7, check perimeter. Keep eyes open. Copy," he replied automatically. Silence resumed, thick and heavy. The farther they drove, the more the air felt wrong, as if the land itself held its breath. Ahead, the cracked road split toward an old boneyard of rusted machinery. "We check it out," Luke murmured. Megan agreed, her hand moving to rest near her holster, thumb tapping nervously. Duke let out a low rumble, nose pressed to the window, sensing danger. When Luke killed the engine, the heat slammed into them like a furnace's roar. They stepped out, boots crunching gravel, their shadows short and stark in the merciless daylight. Megan wiped sweat from her brow and scanned the area. Old tires, a broken chain-link fence, sand swirling like small, angry ghosts. "Feels like a setup," she whispered. Luke hated how right she sounded. He took a cautious step forward, and that was when Duke barked, sharp and urgent, his body tensing. Before Luke could react, something cracked against his skull from behind, white pain exploding like a flashbang. Megan spun to draw, but two silhouettes rushed her. Men with sunburnt skin, dark jeans, scarves masking their mouths. A brutal punch slammed into her temple. She fell hard, vision blurring, the taste of dust and blood mixing on her tongue. Duke lunged to protect them, but a metal bar caught him mid-jump, a yelp tearing from him before darkness took over. Luke's consciousness flickered, heat burning his face, gravel biting into his cheek. Hands dragged him. Plastic cable ties bit deep into his wrists, rough and merciless. Megan groaned somewhere nearby, her breaths sharp with panic. Duke whimpered faintly, struggling but defeated. A coarse voice sneered above them. "Should have minded your own business, cops." Then footsteps. An engine. Silence. The sun became a predator, leering cruelly from overhead. Luke forced his eyes to open. His head throbbed, vision warped, yet he saw Megan tied to a metal pole beside him, fear shining through her defiance. Duke lay nearby, his leash chained short, chest heaving as he tried to bark, but could only emit broken, pained whines. Luke tried to speak, his throat too dry, words scraping like sandpaper. All he could think was, not like this, not dying helpless. Megan's jaw clenched as she stared at the endless desert, fighting back tears. "Luke," she whispered, voice cracking. We can't give up." He swallowed the agony in his chest and nodded, resolve flaring. They were officers, protectors, survivors. Someone was coming for them. Someone had to be. And if the world refused to listen, there was still Duke, refusing to let hope die, his hoarse barking rising against the silence like the first spark of a miracle. Heat rippled off the cracked asphalt as if the world were melting, and Officer Luke Harris fought to keep consciousness alive. His wrists, bound cruelly behind him, felt like they were burning from both plastic ties and the scorching metal pole against his skin. His tongue stuck to the roof of his mouth, every breath rasping like he was inhaling sand. The memory of the attack flickered in his mind, not just fists and weapons, but purpose. Someone wanted them gone. Forever. Megan Clark, tied only a few feet away, had her eyes narrowed and focused, not on the pain, but on Luke and their partner. Her blonde hair, once neat and practical, now clung to her sweat-streaked cheeks. She felt terror clawing at the edges of her mind, the type that whispered she wasn't strong enough. But she had spent her life proving that voice wrong. No heat wave or criminals would take that away now. Duke's sides rose and fell too fast, his paws scraping against the dirt as he tried to stand again, only to collapse back down with a low yelp. The German shepherd's muscles trembled, not from fear, but the sheer fury of being unable to protect his humans. Despite the collar digging into his neck and the short chain anchoring him, his amber eyes stayed sharp, looking from one officer to the other, pleading, pushing them to keep fighting because he still would. "Luke," Megan's voice cracked, barely a whisper, "we can't let them win." Luke's answer was a hoarse grunt, but the look in his brown eyes said yes. Always yes. Suddenly, Duke's ears twitched, an unfamiliar rhythm beneath the hum of heat and silence. A sound that didn't belong in the dead emptiness. Footsteps. Megan held her breath. Luke turned his head slowly, praying it wasn't the men returning to finish them off. Instead, emerging from the shimmer of heat, was a thin, barefoot girl carrying a dirty yellow backpack almost too large for her frame. She looked around 10 years old, with tangled, chestnut-brown hair and pale skin freckled red from the sun. Her clothes were worn, faded denim shorts and an oversized t-shirt stained with dust. Her eyes were soft hazel, wary yet filled with a stubborn strength. This was Ellie Parker, a forgotten child surviving on the edges of a society that rushed past kids like her. Life had taught her early to run from trouble, hide from danger, and trust almost no one. But life had also left her with a heart too big to ignore suffering when she saw it. Duke gave a desperate bark, dry, cracked, barely a sound. Ellie froze. She began to step back before forcing herself still. She had heard suffering before. She knew what it sounded like, and it haunted her. She approached carefully, scanning the area with street-smart suspicion. "Hey," she whispered, voice trembling. "You're police?" Megan forced her voice steady. "Yes, we need help. Please." Ellie's grip tightened on the half-full bottle of water she carried, her only shield against the brutal heat. For a moment she hesitated, fear and instinct warring inside her. If the bad men returned, they would see her too. But when Duke whined again, the decision was made. She knelt beside him first, palms shaken as she offered a few drops of water to his parched tongue. Duke's tail thumped weakly. "Good boy," Ellie murmured, tears threatening. She moved to Luke next, tipping the bottle carefully toward his cracked lips. Luke's eyes fluttered open, and he looked at her the way a man looks at light after believing he'd seen his last sunrise. "Thank you," he rasped. "Radio." His gaze dropped toward the dusty shoulder mic pinned awkwardly to his vest. Ellie followed his glance. She pressed the button just like she'd seen on TV. At first, only static answered. Then a woman's voice, strong, steady, commanding. "Unit 7, respond. Harris? Clark?" Ellie swallowed. "They're hurt," she said into the mic, voice small but clear. "Please, they need help." "Who is this?" "Ellie," she whispered. I'm trying." Duke barked again, louder this time, a spark igniting where his strength had nearly died. The desert no longer felt like a silent grave. Someone knew they were alive. Someone was coming. And as Ellie stood watch, clutching the bottle close, the officer's final lifeline stood in the shape of a child no one had noticed, until she became the only one who could save them. Inside the Cedar Ridge Sheriff's Department, the stale scent of old coffee and dusty paperwork clung to the walls. Sheriff Karen Miller, a woman of 48 with cropped blonde hair streaked with early silver and eyes the color of storm clouds, leaned over the central dispatch console. Her square jaw tightened when the radio crackled again with a faint, trembling voice. Karen had spent years building a shell around her heart after losing her husband, also a deputy, in a shootout 8 years ago. Since then, she refused to let grief weaken her decisions, but every officer under her command had become family, and failures left scars she didn't show. "This is Sheriff Miller. Identify yourself," she demanded, but her voice carried rare softness beneath its authority. Static swallowed part of the response before a girl's voice emerged again. "Their names? Luke and Megan. A dog, too. They're tied up. They need help, please." Karen's pulse slammed against her ribs. She recognized those names like she recognized her own breath. Luke, reliable, steady, almost too willing to dive into danger. Megan, sharp-minded, a fighter, the kind of partner any cop would kill to have their back. And Duke, the canine who'd already earned a medal for saving a child. "Where are you?" Karen asked, already moving, grabbing her hat from her desk. "Desert Road, behind some old machines," the girl replied shakily. "I can't explain. Just hurry." The signal cut with a choking burst of static. Karen didn't hesitate. "Cooper!" she barked. Deputy Ben Cooper, 29, a lean man with sandy brown hair and a slight limp in his right leg, a souvenir from a rookie-year shootout, stood instantly. His gentle, brown eyes reflected nerves, but his loyalty never wavered. Despite his boyish face, life had already taught him that bravery often comes from fear. "What's wrong?" he asked. "Luke and Megan. Someone's taken them." Karen grabbed keys, a first aid pack, and 2 spare canteens without pausing. "We roll now. EMS on standby, full tactical gear." Ben nodded firmly and jogged to the patrol SUV. On the way out, Karen reached the dispatch desk where Clara Parsons, 55, sat, short and round, with glasses dangling from a chain around her neck and a motherly instinct that made her perfect for the job. "Keep trying to raise that girl," Karen instructed. Clara nodded, fingers already flying over controls. "Count on me." Sirens stayed silent as Karen and Ben sped across the cracked roads leading toward the abandoned boneyard. Heat waves twisted the horizon, blurring distance and danger. Karen gripped the handle above her seat, knuckles white. "If someone did this, they knew how to take down trained officers," she muttered, fury simmering beneath her calm. Ben kept his eyes fixed ahead. "We'll find them." When they turned off the main road, the SUV jerked violently over rocks and dips. Ben slowed, scanning for movement. Karen lowered her window, listening. The desert held its breath until a sudden hoarse bark pierced the stillness. "Duke!" Karen pointed. "That way." Ben accelerated, tires kicking up a storm of red dust. Over a small rise, they finally saw them. 2 figures slumped against metal poles, the glint of handcuffs and cable ties, the limp form of a German shepherd straining at his chain. "Luke! Megan!" Karen ran forward, knees hitting the ground beside Luke first. His skin burned to the touch, his breaths shallow. "Hang on," she whispered fiercely, slicing through the ties with a rescue knife. Duke tried to stand when he saw her, tail wagging weakly. Karen's hardened exterior cracked for a second. "Good boy. You held on." Ben freed Megan and offered Duke his entire water bottle, while Karen radioed EMS with rapid precision. In the middle of the rescue chaos, Karen suddenly looked around. "Where's the girl?" Luke swallowed painfully. "She's around here. Saved us." Megan forced a nod, eyes still hazy. "Brave kid," Karen called out loudly, voice echoing against rusted scrap metal. "Ellie, you're safe now. Come here." Silence stretched too long. Then, from behind a toppled truck frame, Ellie Parker stepped out, clutching her worn backpack against her chest like armor. She looked ready to run, ready to disappear back into the invisible life she knew. Karen softened her expression, lowering herself to one knee. "You saved them. You saved my family. We're here because of you." Ellie's eyes flickered with confusion, fear, and longing she didn't dare admit. Are they going to be okay?" she asked. Ben placed a reassuring hand over his heart. "You did what heroes do." Ellie blinked rapidly, disbelief trembling through her small shoulders. The approaching sirens wailed across the desert, a promise that the nightmare was ending. Karen stood, fire burning inside her now, not from desperation, but determination. Someone had attacked her people. Someone thought Cedar Ridge wouldn't fight back. They were wrong. Very wrong. And as the ambulance arrived in a storm of dust and medics rushed to save the fallen officers, the sheriff's gaze shifted toward the endless stretch of desert road. Whoever orchestrated this would pay. Chapter ends. The sun dipped behind the jagged mesas of Cedar Ridge, leaving behind a bruised purple sky as the ambulance rushed Luke Harris, Megan Clark, and Duke toward the hospital. Sheriff Karen Miller stood in the swirling dust of the boneyard, jaw set, eyes narrowing as the first shadows of evening stretched like fingers across the metal wreckage. The heat was fading, but inside her chest burned a storm. She had almost lost them, her officers, her family, and that was unforgivable. Deputy Ben Cooper crouched near the poles where Luke and Megan had been left for dead, scanning tire tracks, scattered footprints, and the cut cable ties tossed aside like garbage. He brushed dirt away to reveal a small black-collared tag half buried in sand. Stamped on it, K9 Property of Cedar Ridge. Ben exhaled heavily. Someone was stealing trained dogs, someone from inside their world. Karen stepped over and took the tag, fingers curling into a fist. "They left this behind on purpose," she muttered, voice low, like a growl. "They want us to know they're not finished." Ben looked up, concern sharpening his expression. "You think it's personal?" Karen didn't answer, because yes, she did. But her anger wasn't enough. She needed proof, and someone back at the station now had it. Hours later, Luke lay in a hospital bed, hooked to IV fluids. Megan rested in the room next door. Duke slept at Luke's feet, a soft whine escaping his dreams. When Karen entered, Luke opened his eyes slowly, wincing as the harsh lights met his battered body. "Sheriff," he rasped, "we found callers, lists. He's stealing our dogs." She pulled a chair close, posture rigid, her badge glinting under the fluorescence. "Who? Luke?" His gaze sharpened, hatred flickering there like a match being struck. "Roy Dalton." The name hit Karen like a punch. Roy Dalton, once a respected K9 trainer in Cedar Ridge, a man with a square jaw, muscular frame, and a grin that fooled cameras and command alike. He had a neatly shaved head and piercing green eyes that always seemed amused by suffering. He used to praise his dogs like they were trophies, not living, breathing partners. 2 years ago, he was dismissed after accusations of animal abuse surfaced. Dogs overworked, starved for obedience. The investigation stalled without proof, but Karen had never stopped suspecting him. "He was waiting for us," Luke whispered. "He knew we were coming." Karen leaned closer. "Someone on the inside." Luke swallowed painfully. "Or he's been watching us for a long time." Before Karen could speak again, a soft knock sounded on the door. A middle-aged man entered, tall, with thinning brown hair and kind but exhausted eyes. He wore a brown suit jacket that didn't quite fit. This was Dr. Samuel Reed, the hospital's head physician. He specialized in trauma care, kind-hearted and meticulous, often called a miracle worker in Cedar Ridge. But the dark circles under. His eyes told the story of too many near losses and long nights. "Luca is dehydrated and has a concussion," Dr. Reed informed Karen. "Megan, too. They'll recover physically. But psychological trauma, being left to die, It leaves marks we can't stitch closed." Karen nodded gratefully, though dread continued coiling inside her. She stepped outside to breathe, only to find Ellie Parker sitting alone in the hallway chair, knees drawn up, backpack hugged tightly. Her cheeks were cleaner now, but fear still lived behind her hazel eyes. She looked small in hospital light, so much smaller than she had standing brave in the desert. Karen sat beside her, voice gentle. "Do you have somewhere to go tonight?" Ellie hesitated before shaking her head. "I usually sleep behind the gas station or by the church." The sheriff's heart twisted. She remembered herself at Ellie's age, still believing the world protected children. Ellie had already learned the truth. Sometimes children protected the world. "How did you know to help them?" Karen asked. Ellie's fingers picked at the loose threads of her shirt sleeve. "Duke didn't stop trying," she whispered, "even when he was hurt. If he thought they were worth saving, then they were." Karen blinked back sudden warmth behind her eyes. "You saved their lives, Ellie. Don't forget that." A nurse approached, a young man named Kyle Evans, no more than 25 with curly blonde hair and gentle freckles, wearing bright blue scrubs. He had a calm presence, soothing but efficient, shaped by working in emergency rooms where loud panic helped no one. "Ma'am, Megan's asking for the girl," he said softly. "She's awake now." Karen stood, placing a steadying hand on Ellie's shoulder. "Come on. She wants to thank you." As Ellie walked ahead with Kyle, Karen's phone buzzed. Clara Parsons' voice crackled through. "Sheriff, I ran a trace on the last known locations of all missing dogs. Every path leads outside the county. And there's something else. You should see for yourself." Karen's voice hardened into steel. "Send me the coordinates." Roy Dalton was building something bigger than just a smuggling ring, and tonight Karen would start tearing it to the ground before he could hurt anyone else. Night fell over Cedar Ridge like a long exhale, stars glimmering faintly above the dark edge of the desert. Sheriff Karen Miller stood in the command room, a digital map glowing across the wall, red pins marking every place a K-9 had vanished. Her jaw clenched as she studied the newest lead, coordinates Clara had traced, a location outside county borders, tucked behind an abandoned livestock facility, perfect for hiding terrible things. Duke, now awake and bandaged, stood firmly at her side. His ears pricked, body tense. He knew this wasn't over, and neither was she. "He's ready?" asked Deputy Ben Cooper as he checked his gear. Karen nodded. "More ready than we are." Duke thumped his tail once, eager, loyal, stronger than fear. They loaded up in silence, determination sealing their resolve. As their convoy rolled into darkness, Karen couldn't ignore the flicker of gratitude that Luke and Megan were safe in the hospital, alive because a girl no one cared about had cared anyway. Speaking of Ellie, she sat quietly behind Karen in the SUV, hugging Duke's spare vest in her lap. It wasn't protocol to take a child into danger, but Ellie had insisted. "He listens to me," she said earlier, chin lifted with unexpected courage. "If he tries to go too fast, I can help him." Karen saw too much truth in that, and too much strength to deny. When they arrived, floodlights flickered above a corrugated metal warehouse. Engines growled inside. Shadows moved like vultures circling prey. Karen raised her fist. The team halted. A wiry guard with a scar splitting his left eyebrow stepped outside to smoke. A man in his mid-30s named Glenn Walker, once a dog handler dishonorably discharged for brutality, now hardened by his own rage. His eyes were cold as rifle barrels. Before he could notice them, Duke stiffened. recognizing a monster. Karen signaled, swift and silent. The takedown happened fast. Ben hooked Glenn's legs while Duke pinned his arm, a furious snarl vibrating through the air. Karen cuffed the man as he swore violently. Inside, panic erupted. Doors slammed. A pickup engine revved. The gate began to lift. They were trying to flee. Karen's voice boomed. "Cedar Ridge Sheriff's Department. Step away from the dogs." The warehouse lights blazed to full power, revealing rows of cages. Dozens of German Shepherds, Belgian Malinois, all panting, terrified, ribs showing. Duke barked, a rallying cry that made the imprisoned dogs rise in hope. Roy Dalton appeared on a metal catwalk, bald head gleaming under the lights, muscular frame rigid with fury. His green eyes narrowed at Karen. "You should have stayed out of this," he snarled. "They're worth more than any badge." Karen's voice was iron. "You lost the privilege to even look at a dog with respect." Roy raised a pistol, aiming straight at Karen. Before anyone could breathe, Duke shot forward, leaping high. The gunshot cracked the air. Metal screamed as the bullet buried into railing instead of bone. Duke slammed Roy onto the walkway, teeth bared. Officers swarmed. Ben seized Roy's weapon. Karen grabbed Duke's harness, steadying him. "Easy, boy," she whispered, heart pounding. Roy lay defeated, hands zip-tied behind him, fury dissolving into pathetic silence. The warehouse filled with barking, the sound of freedom seconds away. Karen and Ben unlocked cages, one after another. Dogs spilled into open space, tails wagging cautiously, as if happiness were a foreign language they suddenly remembered how to speak. Then came the best moment of the night. Ellie running beside Duke, gently guiding frightened dogs into rescue trucks. She knelt by one trembling shepherd, no bigger than a puppy, and pressed her forehead to its muzzle. "It's okay," she whispered, a promise she had longed to hear herself. Sirens painted the warehouse in crime scene blue. News reporters gathered. Cameras flashed. Luke and Megan arrived later, bandaged but smiling, leaning on each other for balance. When Duke bounded toward them, Luke dropped to his knees, burying his face in the dog's fur with a shaky laugh. "Knew you'd finish the fight," Megan ruffled Ellie's hair. "And we knew you'd bring help." Ellie blushed, but didn't pull away. A judge arrived at dawn, signing emergency warrants that shut down Roy's entire trafficking ring. Glenn Walker and the other handlers were hauled away in cuffs. 36 dogs were transported to safety, including Duke's old partner, once presumed dead. Luke stood beside Karen, sunrise warming their bruised faces. "We got them back," he said. "All of them." Karen nodded, eyes softer than they'd been in years. "Thanks to you three." Ellie blinked up at her, uncertain. "Me?" Karen knelt, placing Duke's spare badge into the girl's palm. It was a little heavy, a little worn, and it meant everything. "You're a part of this family now," Karen said, "whether you believe it yet or not." Ellie threw her arms around the sheriff, daring, for the first time, to trust someone wouldn't let go. The desert sun climbed higher, not cruel anymore, but warm, soft, like a blessing, a new day, a new beginning, for Ellie, for the rescued K9s, for everyone who had almost been lost. Hope didn't just survive, it barked, it healed, it came home. In every corner of this world, even the lonely roads and forgotten deserts, God sends a spark of hope through ordinary hearts. A child who stops to help, a loyal dog who refuses to give up, a family that forms where no one expected. These are the quiet miracles that remind us we are never abandoned. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs hope today. Leave a comment with your prayers and subscribe to join us for more stories of courage and faith. May God bless you, protect you, and fill your days with the miracles you didn't know you were waiting for.